after having spent over a decade and a half working with and on and in restaurants, every time I go out to eat, I pick them apart. And thankfully, it's just in my head. So I want to share with you kind of how it goes. First thing I get is, "Hi, may I help you?" And I always want to say, and one time I said it, "I'd like to get a haircut, please." Next thing I hear, well, God forbid, if I'm dining solo, I hear, "Just one," as if I'm sad or I'm lacking or I'm just sad to be dining alone. And then if I have company, they usually say hi 2 or hi 4, and I always want to say, "Am I just a number to you?" Next thing you know, they rush you to your seat, and while the host is walking 30 feet ahead of you, and you don't have time to catch up, and before you even sit down, the menus are already on the table, and the host says, "The specials are right here, and your server will be right over." All right. So I sit down, and the server comes over, and he says, "Hi, my name is Chris, and I'll be your server today." And I'm thinking, oh, so that is why you're standing next to my table with a pen and a pad. Got it. Next thing you know, between my appetizer and the entree, Chris says, "So how is everything, okay?" And when he says everything, I know he really means nothing. Because when was the last time everything was great or everything was bad? It's not an authentic question, and it really begs for a dishonest answer. And I really marvel not at the idea that he just wants my meal to be just okay. What do I hear next? "Are you still working on that?" And I'm like, okay, I just got off work. I didn't know my meal was supposed to be work too, but okay, yes, I am. And then comes the most dreaded question or phrase of all. You probably have never heard of it. "Have you saved room for dessert?" I'm like, does anyone ever says yes to this question? Because we overuse it so much, it has no meaning. After that, Chris brings the bill, and he says, "I'll take it whenever you're ready." Well, if you'll wait until I'm ready, why bring the bill? Right? And then they hit you with the classic. "Thanks, come back and see us." You know what I call that? Verbal wallpaper. Like, it has no meaning whatsoever, right? So by your reactions, I can kind of tell that is your typical experience in restaurants, yeah? And do you think they care about you? No. Do you think it's genuine? Do you think it's hospitality? I call this service by default. And this is when we become cogs in a restaurant machine, and our servers or bartenders become kind of human food transport and order takers, right? And I know this is not just common in restaurant industry, but I think it's astounding that this is what's happening in the hospitality industry. And I sort of have an idea why that's happening. We have become a culture of what works, what makes money. We've become a culture of let's put process before people, because process is what drives results. Well, I have a different opinion, obviously. I grew up in Georgia, as Andrea said, and not the peach state, but the country of Georgia in Eastern Europe. And I think the first thing and the most important thing I want you to know about Georgians is that we have this rare condition called hospitality, compulsive hospitality disorder. I call it CHD. I still remember my parents, when someone would stop by for business or pleasure, first thing they would do is usher them to the table. And only after they had offered everything and anything we had in the house to eat and drink, they would say, "What brings you in? How can I help?" You see, I know every country boasts of its warm welcoming of guests, but in Georgia, the hospitality is extended to strangers. It is boundless, it is unconditional. It isn't uncommon that if you go to Georgia and ask for directions, simply ask for directions, you'll be offered a ride and a dinner and a nightcap. Now you can understand why I call it a bit of a disorder. But hospitality is not just a custom, is a social currency there. It is valued more than reputation or generosity or bravery or courage. There is even a saying in Georgia, the stranger will never die of hunger. And my personal belief is that that single phrase is responsible for the ever expanding Georgian tourism today. It's booming because I think all the hungry people in the world said, let's just go to Georgia. But you see, I know this seems a bit excessive, especially in the culture we live today. Human touch is so scarce, and it's becoming more scarce by day. The human interaction, right? It's almost non-existing right now. But having grown up with this belief that putting people first before the process is what really creates the results that we want, is really what creates the business that we want and the life that we really want. So I think that's what drove me to do the work I do today as a business and life coach. And I love working with restaurant owners. For one, it has its perks, like free dinners. And a couple of years ago, I was invited to a really fancy dinner in Miami, Florida, where I live. The friend of the restaurant owner said, I want to see if you can help them because it's a fabulous restaurant, but they're perpetually empty. This restaurant was ranked top 50 in the world. The chef top 5 in Latin America, all of Latin America. The menu was a blend of modern Latin cuisine and molecular gastronomy. And if you're not familiar with molecular gastronomy, it's the style of cooking where chefs use the blend of physics and chemistry to transform the texture and the taste of food. Quite interesting concept. The challenge with it, once you experience it, you start developing strange cravings like espresso pasta, glass potato chips, and transparent ravioli, and sphere-shaped cocktails. So here I was, sitting there having a 16-course feast cooked to perfection. The service was executed immaculately, but obviously the restaurant was struggling and there was something missing. And here's what it was. They spent so much effort making things perfect, but they forgot that they had to make people feel great. So I sat there thinking, what a shame that a restaurant can put so much talent and artistry and expense and effort and time into creating an incredible meal, but they forgot the main ingredient, hospitality. You see, service is a sequence of tasks, acts, and procedures which are done with consistency. It's the mechanics, the logistics, it's the how-to part of anything we do. But what happens when we just provide good service is already expected. We expect our meal to be out of the kitchen in less than 15 minutes. We expect our iPhone to come with Apple Care. And we expect our Amazon packages to be delivered in less than 2 days now, right? But here's a fundamental problem with just good service. It's an even exchange. There's a study done at Vanderbilt University that said over 40% of customers do not return to businesses that satisfy them. Why do you think that is? Well, when we get a perfectly inhuman experience, we're satisfied and we expect to be satisfied. We expect to get our money's worth. And when we do, we're even and we forget about it. What is there to rave about? We remember and rave extras, don't we? The places, the people, the experiences that blew us away. So what is hospitality? Hospitality is the positive emotional response elicited in our guests while we're delivering that service. See, service can be methodical. It can be given methodically. But hospitality is very, very emotional. It's highly dynamic. It's the confidence, it's the thoughtfulness, it's the welcoming, it's the inclusion, right? Service is what we do for people, and hospitality is what we do with them. And there is a difference. We forget good service, but we do remember hospitality. I still remember first time I flew first class. As soon as I stepped my foot on the plane, the flight attendant greeted me with, "Good morning, Ms. Dolce." And before I sat down in my seat, she hands me a glass of champagne. And I'm thinking, how does she know my name? And I didn't know it was socially acceptable to drink alcohol at 10 a.m. Well, hotels can be a really cold place, don't they? I checked in a hotel yesterday, and they read off your name in 1 minute, and they forget it the next. And as soon as you arrive, they already tell you when to leave and what time to be out by, 11 a.m. And I think hotel restaurants are especially cold and transient and kind of a soulless place, right? Well, not everywhere. I stayed in Union Station Hotel in St. Louis, Missouri once. And I had been away from home for a few days, and St. Louis is a kind of quiet place, and I was eager to get back home, feeling kind of homesick, and I went to a breakfast lounge in the hotel. And one of the servers, Kiana, she did something no server has ever done. She made me cry. As soon as I stepped into the lounge, Kiana rushed over to me and she asked my name and she got to know me a little bit. And it seems like a really small thing, but the way she did it made it really, really special. I felt like nothing else existed for her in the moment, and I was the most important thing to her. Come to find out, there were 30 other people in the lounge. Kiana knew everyone by name. She knew why they were there, what they were doing later that day, if they were ever coming back to St. Louis. She had weaved these, it didn't feel like we were in a hotel restaurant, it felt like we were in Kiana's living room. She had weaved these, I call it strings of connection between people, so that none of us felt like a stranger to either one of us, to each other. It was incredible. I sat there barely eating my breakfast and just staring at Kiana the whole time. And when it was time for me to leave, my eyes welled up. Not because I didn't finish breakfast, but because it was the closest I had come to experiencing that Georgian type of hospitality while away from home. So I think it comes down to this. I think we need to lead with hospitality at home, at work, and in restaurants. So does anyone plan to go out to dinner this evening? It's just me? I don't believe you. Well, when you do, you have a real chance to help that business put their people first. How do you do it? When something is off, something is not right, speak up. Because we have this tendency not to speak up, most of us. And speak up not to point things out, not to point out what's wrong, but to help them get it right. And that's how you do it. That's in the way you point out what's wrong. Second is speak up when something does go right. Because having worked in restaurants, I can tell you, people who work in them are criticized a lot more than they're praised. And the praise is something that goes really deep with us, with people. Because we are wired that way. We're wired to be acknowledged, to be seen, right? So catch your server do something right and make a big deal about it. They're gonna look for another opportunity, for the next opportunity to shine. If you are a business owner in this room, just know that to succeed in business, to get ahead in business, is gonna require you to touch a lot of hearts. It's gonna require you to put people ahead of process, ahead of dollar signs, and ahead of everything else. And you can't do it alone. And remember, service is a skill, hospitality is a spirit. So, and I know it seems implicit that people would set aside their own needs and wants and selfishly care for others, but the key, the secret, is to hire people to whom taking care of others is actually a selfish act. So we are all humans, and hospitality is nothing more than acknowledging each other's humanity. It is our biggest job, it is our best skill, it is our biggest asset. So let's use it. Thank you.